Hello everybody all around the globe, all around the world. It is time to talk about the most famous and most prestigious of book awards. The Oscar, the Tony, the Emmy and the Grammy of books, the Booker Prize 2024. At the end of July, the jury will come up with a long list of very likely 13 books, the so-called Booker dozen, and large groups of booktubers, large groups of readers out there will basically put away everything they were about to read or were in the middle of reading and start doing the long list. Well, I won't. I am probably too old and too stubborn to read a whole list of books where some of them would not be piquing my interest other than just being part of a long list. However, ever since I have a booktube channel, and that is almost 4 years ago, I have loved to speculate about which books might make it on the long list of the Booker. There is quite a sophisticated set of rules of eligibility. Most important, books have to be published in the United Kingdom or the Republic of Ireland between October 1, 2023 and September 30, 2024. Which of course implies that the jury might have gotten hold of books that are still about to come out later and that they valued so highly that they put them on their list because they already have advanced reading copies. Publishers can submit one book to the jury unless they have former winning authors. Their potential new books can all be submitted. And then the jury will do the math on how many publishers had books on the shortlist in recent years, which can give them additional opportunities to send in books to the Booker Prize, which will then give them to the jury. And of course, a jury has always to be very careful to create a diverse list of men, women, and other. Of older, well-known and younger debut authors of different parts of the world, UK, Ireland, USA, almost never Australia, but definitely Asia. Statistics can drive you crazy and statistics can steal your time. So I took a look at the last 10 years from 2014 to 2023. 34 publishers or imprints had a total of 57 books on the long list, nobody more than 5, whereas 8 publishers had 73 books on the long list. The big ones being Faber and Faber with 15 titles, Hamish and Hamilton and Jonathan Cape had 11 each. However, the folks over at Cape, they have had no long-listed books since 2019 when Frankenstein by Janet Winterson was long-listed. 7 publishers produced 11 winners in the last 10 years, and yes, we all do remember when Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo shared the award with Margaret Atwood's The Testaments. Most successful gold medal winners were One World and Shadow and Windus, with 3 victories each in the last 10 years. That's a lot, that's 60%, right? Another thing to look at is sex. Judges almost have to try to get almost even between the 2 major sexes in the last 10 years. We had 5 years with more male and 5 years with more female authors in the Booker dozen. 6 out of 10 years had a 7-6 for either a man or women, like a tiebreak in tennis, which seems to be the appreciated result. In 2014, there was an almost scandalous relation where we saw 10 men to 3 women, whereas we saw 9 to 4 women in 2020. Overall, men received 64 spots on the long list and women had 66. Geographically, the United Kingdom and preferably also Ireland must be represented. And the United States, of course. Booker juries tend to longlist one author from an African country, seldom more. Mostly we have someone from Nigeria, Zimbabwe, or South Africa within the Booker dozen. Asia got a spot in each of the last 3 seasons. We have seen Tan Tuan Eng in 2023, the winner Shihan Karantilaka in 2022, and Anouk Aritpragasam in 2021. The last author from Australia or New Zealand to make the long list was the later winner, Eleanor Captain from New Zealand in 2013, 11 long years ago. Between 3 and 5 authors, and never more, are non-white in the last 7 or 8 years. Then you must have at least one big name on the long list, former winners or winners of other major literary awards. We had Ann Tyler in 2015. We have J.M. Coetzee in 2016, Paul Auster in 2017, and Michael Ondaatje in 2018 as some examples for you. But since books by well-known authors sell by themselves, since they already have their paying audience, debut novels have become a recurring theme for literary awards. The industry can launch a new name and immediately get the attention of tens of thousands of enthusiastic readers. In 2023, we had 4 debut novels among the 13. There were 3 only in 2022, 2 in 2021. In the year the pandemic began, in 2020, the Booker had 8 debut novels on the longlist, and Douglas Stewart from Scotland won with Shuggie or Shuggie Bain. Shuggie Bain was the 8th debut novel that actually won the prestigious prize in the history. Other first-timers were Arundhati Roy, Carrie Hume, Aravind Adiga, and Marlon James. In a list of 13, there should be between 2 to 4 debut novels. As you realize, there is a lot the jury has to weigh in order to deliver a Booker dozen that is well balanced in all the mentioned categories. So whenever you want to predict a long list, you also have to take that into your deliberations, because you're the jury yourself. Which brings us to my long list, my prediction, probably the first time I get 13 out of 13 right. Well, right? There is no one of all of my deeply admired BookTube colleagues that does not have Percival Everett's novel James on their list. Well, almost no one, I guess. In James, Everett takes us back to a book that my former English professor, Alan J. Hansen, has described as the starting point for all American literature. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, aka Samuel Clemens. That is the focal point for Everett's book. Here, the formerly enslaved Jim, or James, speaks and tells his story, and together with Huck Finn, he travels the dangerous Mississippi River. That reminds me actually of another book, namely of Barbara Kingsolver's Demon Copperhead, where she also took a classic, this time British novel, called David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, and gave it new life. But where Kingsolver transported Dickens' characters and Dickens' theme into Appalachia, into the United States, and into our century, Everett has stuck to the 19th century, and added an important perspective. Didn't I buy Deborah Magpie Erling's novel, The Lost Journals of Sachajiwa in Portland, where the author tells the story of Lewis and Clark's famous indigenous translator? James seems to visit that country, that terrain, and everybody tells me it is a major piece of literature in the English language this year. So by putting James on the list, I have nominated a man, a black man, an American black man who has written a historical novel. His book was published by Mantle, which is a small imprint that belongs to a huge publisher, Pan Macmillan Books. Pan Macmillan is part of the German Holzbrink Publishing Company and belongs to them, belongs to Germany, like a lot of other imprints belong to Bertelsmann in Germany. Chigozie Obioma from Nigeria is only 38 years old. Nevertheless, he has managed to have already been twice on the Booker shortlist, with The Fisherman in 2015, published by One, and An Orchestra of Minorities, published by Little and Brown in 2019. His third novel is The Road to the Country, published by Hutchinson and Heinemann in May this year. Between 1967 and 1970, Nigeria experienced the Biafran Civil War that tore the country apart and led to about 100,000 soldiers killed and between 3 or 4 million Biafrans dying from famine during a blockade. More people had to flee their homes. Millions of people were affected. The whole country was affected, more or less. In this civil war, Obioma's new novel finds 2 brothers on the opposite sides. At its center, we have a young, shy, bookish student who is forced to fight a war he hardly understands. The novel has been described as an odyssey of brotherhood, love, and unimaginable courage. By putting both Percival and Chigozie Obioma on the Booker dozen list, I have already 2 male black authors, which limits the spots for other authors of color. There should not be more now than 5 males, and maybe not even more than additionally a maximum of 4. Better 3 writers of color to stay within the well, the Booker formula if you want. Enter the first woman on the long list here, Caris Davies' second novel, Clear. Davies grew up in Wales. She has lived in the United States of America and now calls Edinburgh, Scotland her home. In Clear, she brings together two men on a Scottish island in the vicinity of Shetland in the 1840s. Minister John Ferguson is sent to that island to evacuate it, to get its last and only inhabitant, Ivar, with him to the mainland. But shortly after arriving, John has a terrible accident and Ivar takes care of him, two men having to establish not only communication despite different languages, but also communicating from two different ways of seeing the world. The Guardian says Davies is a writer of immense talent and deep humanity, capable of balancing devastating audacity with equally devastating restraint. And this book here sounds like a typical Booker book to me, but not necessarily the one that I will be rushing to the library for, but I think it's a Booker book. And the publisher is Granta in the United Kingdom. I do not believe we'll see two women writing about the Caribbean on the long list. So I had to decide, I had to choose between Ingrid Perso's The Last Love Songs of Boise Sing and Monique Ruffy's Passion Tide. I gave my vote for Monique Ruffy and Passion Tide. Maybe because Sophia Sinclair has blurbed it as beautiful and important. Passion Tide is about one of this world's most horrendous disasters that is occurring in so many countries, femicide. A young female steel pen player is killed in the beginning of the novel. Four women are drawn together by this awful event, a journalist and her childhood friend who is a local activist, the founder of a sex workers collective and the first lady of the island who is haunted by the story of a missing family member a long, long time ago. It is a book about the strength of women in an environment that normally does not hear strong voices of women. And it was published by Harvill Secker and was the book number 4 on my list. Irish authors regularly appear on the long list, and one of Booker's favorites over the years has been 69-year-old Colm Toibin. He was on the shortlist in 1999 for The Blackwater Lightship, published by Picador, and also for The Muster in 2004, made the long list with Brooklyn in 2009 for Viking, and then for a third time the shortlist in 2013 for The Testament of Mary with Viking. Now he has published a sequel to his novel Brooklyn, which is called Long Island, again with Picador as the publisher. Here Toibin writes about the eternal question if it is possible to return to a once lost greatest love. A man with an Irish accent knocks at Ellie Ferrello's door on Long Island, New York, and makes her question her whole life. Her life that she has built with her beautiful husband Tony, and she's again connected to her Irish ancestry. Will Colm Toibin make his 5th appearance, his 5th entry onto the Booker long list? Then he would join the likes of Kazuo Ishiguro and Sebastian Barry, who have 5 nominations each. I think he will, and he has the 5th book on the list. The Third Male. The necessary Irish title, and also one of the big names that usually tend to show up. Faber & Faber is by far the most successful publisher over the course of the last 10 years, with 15 long list positions averaging 1.5 titles within the Booker dozen. Rachel Cusk's new novel, Parade, is going to be the 57-year-old British author's 3rd nomination after In the Fold 2005 and 2nd place in 2021. In her new work, she confronts and demolishes the convention of storytelling. It surges past the limits of identity, character, and plot to tell a true story about art, about family, morality, gender, and how we compose ourselves. That is certainly something that makes it a Booker book. Prominent and a bit older North American women have had their visits on the long list in recent years. I think of Elizabeth Strout's William in 2022, Mary Lawson's A Town Called Solace in 2021, and Ann Tyler's Redhead by the Side of the Road in 2020. This encourages me actually to put Alice McDermott on the list and her novel Absolution, published by Bloomsbury. This is a very intelligent story about some expat women during the Vietnam War, stationed in Saigon. At the center is a girl called Tricia, a 23-year-old young lady whose husband works in the military-industrial complex for the United States in Saigon. She and her friends have their Vietnamese maids, they are bored, and they turn to charity. Early in the novel, Tricia suffers a miscarriage and becomes close with Charlene. The story is told 60 years later by a very old Tricia to Charlene's daughter. Women are up for 3 now on my list. Enters Andrew O'Hagan, who is the second Scot on my list after Caris Davies, who lives in Edinburgh but also could be counted as Welsh. Difficult to say here. O'Hagan was on the shortlist of the Booker in 1999 for Our Fathers, representing Faber and Faber in 2006. His second show came with Be Near Me, adding the Illuminations in 2015 to his Booker biography. His new book is called Caledonian Road, and it must be there as his 4th nomination. It is Faber and Faber's second title on my long list. It is already shortlisted for the well-renowned Orwell Prize for Political Fiction and is set to paint a picture of the United Kingdom of today, having a man named Campbell Flynn at its center. The publisher calls Caledonian Road an irresistible, unputdownable state-of-the-nation novel, the story of one man's epic fall from grace. And I really hope that can take its readers through its 692 pages. Quite a thick, quite a big book. With 8 books in, I have 4 men, I have 4 women, 2 Americans, 3 authors from the UK, 1 from Nigeria, and 1 from Trinidad, and 1 Irish. This really looks good, doesn't it? So let's keep on going with that long list of mine with my prediction. Comes in a book from the women's shortlist, River East, River West by Aubrey Lescure. It was shortlisted for the Women's Prize, as I said, which might make it difficult for it to gain a spot on the Booker long list, because these awards and prizes, they do not often want to copy other well-renowned lists. But this book fits quite well, I think. The author is French, Chinese, American, and she takes us to Asia, a continent we definitely need on a balanced long list for the Booker Prize. And River East, River West is also a debut, something I desperately need for my list. Published by Duckworth, set against the backdrop of modern China, we see this book. This novel follows 2 generations of Chinese families with events that are basically playing between 1985 and 2007. Book number 10, Woman number 6, Elif Shafak, Turkish-British novelist, essayist, and activist. Her new novel is There Are Rivers in the Sky, and Viking will publish this on August 8 in a couple of weeks. It is Shafak's second appearance on the Booker long list, if she comes on that list, after 10 minutes and 38 seconds in This Strange World in 2019. It connects the Tigris and the Thames and the lives of people in 1840s Turkey as well as contemporary London. An enchanting new tale about 3 characters living along 2 rivers, all under the shadow of one of the greatest epic poems of all time, the Epic of Gilgamesh, that dates back to 2100 before Christ. A book that Booker jurors should love and praise by putting it on the long list. Back to Ireland once again. Back to debut novels, introducing man number 5 on this nuanced and well-balanced long list of mine. Alan Marin is an Irish writer based in Berlin, Germany, actually, in my home country. His debut novel, that already has been sold to Germany, but also to Italy, is called The Coast Road and takes us to Donegal in 1994, the very year before divorce finally was legal in the Republic of Ireland. A closed community, we see. A bohemian writer who left her husband and her sons, who enlists the help of a housewife. A friendship between these 2 women developed that will send them on a spiraling journey between self-discovery and also tragedy. I have 2 more spots left on my long list, on my Booker Dozen long list. Do I need to make more checks that I have not made yet? 6 women, 5 men. Can I afford to have another American, one of my favorite authors? One that I would love to see on the long list with her newest novel? One who has been longlisted once before for her novel The Moss Room in 2018? We'll do it. We'll do it, we'll put her on the long list. So let's hear it for the amazing and wonderful Rachel Kushner and her creation, like her new novel. And folks, Jonathan Cape is triumphant return now to the bookers with Rachel Kushner's novel because she's published by Jonathan Cape in the UK. Sadie Smith is a 34-year-old undercover agent sent to a remote corner of France. Her mission is to infiltrate a commune of eco-activists. She meets an enigmatic older man, Bruno Lecomte, who has rejected civilization, a woman caught between the past and the future. Cape calls this a work of high art, high comedy, and irresistible pleasure. I do not know if Booker jurors go for pleasures, but I certainly hope so. Last but not least, folks, Garth Greenwell and Small Rain. Garth is the 4th or 5th American here, depending on how you count. A writer lies in hospital in the ICU within the dysfunctional American healthcare system. He tries to understand what is happening with his body that's not working anymore. Small Rain surges beyond the hospital to encompass a radiant vision of our shared vulnerabilities, the ideal of art, and the fragile dream of America. Sounds like a 256 book pages reflection about the human condition and is a good number 13 choice on my long list. I might have them all right here. 13 books, my book a dozen. I might have them all wrong, and probably I have them wrong. What are your favorites? What will make it in a bit less than 2 weeks now? We'll know. Will I read the long list? Hell no, I will keep continuing making my own choices and pick the books and the ones that pique my personal interest. I see you soon here on the channel, and I wish you all a great weekend. Bye-bye.